Now to some developing news we're watching for you out of the United States, where President Joe Biden has now approved the additional deployment of US troops to Eastern Europe amid that standoff with Russia over Ukraine. The Pentagon saying just a short while ago today that will include 2,000 troops sent to Poland and to Germany this coming week. Meanwhile, around 1,000 other American troops are to be repositioned from Germany to Romania, that is on NATO's most eastern flank, closest to Russia. All the while, though, diplomatic efforts are still continuing aimed at averting a conflict in the region. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is scheduled to speak shortly today to Vladimir Putin. Well, covering all of this for us is our Foreign Affairs editor, Philipp Turle. And Philip, I know you've been listening to a little of the Pentagon briefing taking place today. Tell us a bit more about what's being said.
Yeah, this was John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, who was confirming what we'd already been told earlier today, that President Biden was going to give the go-ahead for the deployment of these US forces. That basically means 2,000 troops are going to be deployed in Poland and in Germany, and 1,000 extra troops will be repositioned in Romania. The troops in Poland will be from the 87th Infantry, the troops in Germany from the 18th Airborne Fleet. That has now been confirmed that is going to take place. John Kirby also welcomed the moves by France President Macron and also Florence Parly, the Armed Forces Minister in France, for them saying they were also going to deploy more troops into Romania to try to head off the possibility of an armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Now, at the same time this afternoon, as that announcement from the Pentagon has come out, we've also been hearing from the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, who's been talking about the situation there. He's been basically saying quite a few things. First of all, Ukraine is ready to meet with Russia in any format, he says, either by phone, by Zoom, by head-to-head talks. They want to avoid any kind of armed conflict, so they want those talks to go ahead. He can't confirm any decrease in the numbers of Russian troops, but says that according to the Ukrainian forces, there are not enough Russian troops based on the border to be able to launch an invasion. He says he believes energetic diplomacy is helping in averting the threat of a Russian military offensive, and the only thing that can happen is that Russia needs to abide by the Minsk agreement. So what it basically looks like right now, Nadia, is that these increased diplomatic efforts. We had Boris Johnson, who went to Ukraine yesterday from the United Kingdom. He's due to talk, as you were saying, to Vladimir Putin a bit later on today. We've had the French president talking to the Russian leader this week as well, plus all this military build-up, the Western forces coming into Eastern Europe, Romania, into Germany and into Poland, in the hopes that all this is going to dissuade the Russians from trying to launch any kind of attack into Ukraine.
And at the same time, Western countries still reiterating sanctions will be imposed if Russia invades Ukraine. Tell us a bit more about what that strategy looks like.
Well, there are several ways they could do this. If you look back to 2014 and the sanctions that were introduced after the Russian annexation of Crimea, they didn't really have much effect. They did affect the Russian economy a little bit, but it didn't stop President Putin's military manoeuvre. So if they're going to be sanctions this time around, they have to be very well thought out. Some of the ideas that the US Congress wants, for example, include financial sanctions where they're going to hit the Russian money, the Russian wallet as hard as they can. Russian banks, for example, being blacklisted, which could have a negative effect on the way Russian banks are dealt with overseas, and many overseas companies wouldn't want to deal with Russian banks, which would cause, for example, a fall in the value of the ruble. So that's something that Russia would want to avoid. Two of the biggest banks, the Sberbank and the VTB Bank, for the moment, they're on the list, but they may be not pinpointed in the immediate by that, but they could also be affected if that move was taken. I think the really radical step that the West could take would be to push the nuclear button, which would be basically to ban Russia from using the SWIFT mechanism or system which allows for immediate money transfers from around the world. If they were taken off, that would seriously affect the way Russian currency is sent around the world. The problem is that if Russia is hit that way, what it could do is to, for example, switch off gas supplies to Europe, and that would seriously undermine Europe's dependence on Russian fuel and Russian gas, especially during the winter.
Philipp Turle, thanks very much indeed for your analysis on the programme.